Output One gives you several plugins that provide a tremendous amount of value. Now, you probably have seen a lot about Output One and just output plugins in general, especially Arcade, and 99% of those are probably sponsored videos. This is not one of those. I'm going to be diving in and seeing if Output One is worth it. If you're like me, you hate subscription models, but this does seem to offer some value, and depending on who you ask, they'll say it's a great value, or on the other end, they'll say it's completely unnecessary. So without overthinking it, we're going to test it out and see what all we get with the subscription and if it's worth your money. So I'm going to be making a Memphis beat solely using plugins from the Output One bundle, and at the end we'll decide whether or not I think it's worth it. We're going to start off with Arcade, probably I would say there's two plugins that I would say are fighting for like the most used out of the bundle, and Arcade is definitely one of them. It's great because it has a bunch of samples, but it also has stuff that you can use as instruments, which I think is super cool, and that's what I'm going to do here. As you can see, I just searched for trap, and then I hit instruments, and I hit keys, and it gave me these different pianos, and you can kind of preview them if you hit the play button here. And I like this nighttime piano, so we're going to use that. So that's what we're starting off with, and I think it sounds pretty good. I think that's a pretty cool piano sound. It's a little bit different. It's not just the plain piano. If we pull up Arcade, you can see we have these different parameters we can play with. Alright, not gonna overthink it. I like it there. Sounds pretty good. So let's move in to the next plugin. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is pull up Co-Producer. And I've already ran it once. I didn't give it any sort of prompt. This is their AI plugin that analyzes your audio, whatever you have at the time. So right now we just have that chord progression, and we give it the key. It has our session BPM, and then it finds samples that I think would fit well over it. And what I think is really cool about this is that when you play it, it plays in time with your sample. It jumps to like the correct placement. So you're not having to time up when you start your sample and when you start this, when you start your audio and when you start the sample in here, it's just going to play at the same timing. So we can try out a couple different things, see if there's something we like. Alright, that one right away sounds pretty dang good. Let's drag out our MIDI there, and then all we gotta do is we gotta grab the sample, drag it into the DAW, and it's there. Adjust the volume here. Alright, that sounded pretty cool. I'm gonna mute it for now. I'm gonna try out some other things in case I find something that I like better. One thing I've never done I want to try out is what if we pull drums from here? See if we got any cool trap drums. Let's just start trap hi-hats. Might be able to find a cool trap hi-hat pattern here. Try Memphis trap drums. I think the drums are kind of weak on here. I'm not gonna lie, these kicks are super weak in particular. So don't think I'm going to use anything I found from CoProducer on that. So, it's kind of hit or miss on CoProducer. I do think it's a cool tool to kind of draw some inspiration from, but is it something that I'll use every production? Not by any means. All right, quick wardrobe change. Finish this on another day. We're getting back into it. Let's get into the other plugins. So it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to use output for drums. The mix on those samples is just not good enough for me. So I'm not even gonna, bother with it. But there are a few more plugins we have to look at. And the first one we'll pull up here is Portal. Portal is one of my favorite plugins from Output, and just in general. I use this a ton on trap beats. It's just a super cool effect plugin, and you can get third-party banks. I have several from J Cactus here that have cool stuff going on. So let's just solo the pad right now so we can just see what it's doing. All right, so this is without anything. So you can hear you get these like granular effects and stuff in there. Really can spice stuff up. That was from bonus pack. So let's go to the start here, the stock stuff they have. That sounds super cool. Don't think it would fit with the beat we're making right now. Okay, let's listen in context of everything. Alright, so you can see it's giving it some movement, and as opposed to without, it's just adding some cool texture. So what I like about it is that's really easy to use. I just kind of play around with stuff. You don't really have to know what you're doing. Just play around with the presets. And then if we come here, you can drag this around. You can get it just how you like it. So that's Portal. If you want to look into Portal, there's a lot of videos out there on it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. Another plugin, let's put it on our piano, is Thermal. So you get Thermal as well, and this is a saturation plugin. So this one I do not use a whole lot. I have used it before. I use it every now and then. But let's just see if we can do something to spice up our piano here. Alright, so, Thermal's pretty cool too. It works a lot of the same way that Portal does, just the effects are a little bit different. Comes with a ton of different presets you can use and play around with. There is one more plugin, and let's take a look at that. And this one is called Movement. Now, Movement, there's a good chance, okay, it's actually loading. I've had issues with this one in the past where it would not load or just made my dog crash. So we'll see what happens as we try to use this. I'm not super familiar with this one, so we're just going to play around with it and see what we get. Okay, so you can see there we had we had an audio issue. This uses a lot of CPU. I think that's part of the problem. So my other session may have been loaded up with a lot more stuff. If we go back to that first one, plucking around, I kind of like this effect. Okay, yeah. So you get, filters, delays, compression. You can customize these. So there's distortion, EQ, reverb. So this one's actually really cool. I'm gonna have to play around with this one more for sure. Seems like I've definitely been sleeping on this plugin. There's a lot of cool things now that I'm looking at it that I could do with this. But like I said, I had issues with it in the past. But I was probably loaded up with like 6 analogies at the time, and so I was probably just maxing out my CPU. Looking at my CPU meter, it's pretty high from using this, so this might be a hard plugin to run on certain machines. I have a MacBook M4, and it's struggling a little bit with it. So maybe it's a Mac issue. Could be, possibly. Probably not, though. It's probably all CPUs, probably pretty intense. All right, I'm gonna finish up the beat, cut to the end, and get the final result. All right, so I threw on some drums. I threw another thermal on the vocal. I mixed down the thermal on the keys a little bit, and ranged a short little beat here. Let's see what we got. I also added this little extra pattern just for some variation. Same keys I used on the main section. You can hear that thermal just gave it some space and some grit on that vocal. I also did a slight variation in the melody here. Just took out some notes next to some other notes. And we're back in the hook. All right, so in review, you get arcade, co-producer, portal, movement, and thermal. If we look at the pricing here, you can see it's $14.99 a month if billed monthly, or $9.99. Sorry, or $9.99 a month if you do it for the yearly subscription. So at that price point, I think $14.99 is too much for me personally. So I would either commit to the year or not do it at all. I think $10 a month is pretty reasonable. Arcade is super dope. You get instruments plus samples. Co-producer, it's fun. It pulls things from arcade. Do I think co-producer adds a ton of value to this bundle? Not really. They did add a new feature where you can reimagine a sample and it tries to create a variation of it. In my experience, it hasn't been very good so far. Could improve in the future, but right now, don't really care for it. Portal FX, I love Portal. Some people aren't a big fan of it because it's been used a lot, but for me, I think it's a cool way to spice things up, and it's just fun to play with. Same thing with thermal. I think it's a very cool saturation plugin, and just to add texture and stuff to your beat. And then movement. Before this video, before like playing around with it some more, I wasn't a big fan of movement. But now I'm seeing that maybe I was sleeping on that a little bit. So it's up to you whether or not you think it's worth it. You have a 7-day free trial if you've never used it before. I would do the trial, use the crap out of it, and see if it's worth it to you. But yeah, unbiased opinion. I think Arcade and Portal alone makes the $9.99 price worth it, unless you're just going to go ahead and just buy Portal outright. But you get thermal and movement in addition, and then co-producer is a nice little toy to play around with every once in a while if you need some inspiration. I found more times using co-producer that it inspires me to go and make a different type of beat. I'll hear a sample and they're like, oh, that sample's really cool. I could make a beat this way. So it's more of an inspiration plugin for me, as opposed to something that really finds something that fits into my beat every time. It does work. Do I think it works as well as a lot of people show it on YouTube? No, they're cutting out the part where they've went through a ton of samples that didn't really fit at all. So that one's a little overhyped in my opinion, but these others are all very good. So it gets my recommendation. Hope you guys like the beat. Hope you guys like the video. If there's something else you'd like me to bring to the channel, let me know. Till next time, peace.